Um, good afternoon. A very big welcome to everyone to the Safe Space workshop. Safe Space is a race equality matters solution to help tackle race inequality in the workplace. I'm Javid Thomas, co-founder of Race Equality Matters, along with the fantastic Raj Tulsiani of Green Park. I'm also the founder of the Collaboratory, which creates collaborations to tackle societal issues that matter the most. We're delighted that you have joined us with more than 100 other organizations have registered for today's event. It clearly shows the appetite and will for tackling race inequality. Attendees today are diverse themselves. Obviously a number of ethnic minority colleagues from across the UK, senior leaders, D&I specialists and allies across a whole range of sectors, not-for-profits, commercials, small and large. This is absolutely terrific. So thank you all for your time this afternoon. In today's session, we are going to share how Safe Space came about. Next slide, please, Anish. And why it needed to go through some key steps and the how to do it right guide. So on screen is a little cartoon. And we'll explain why we created the how to do it right guide, but again, to help us avoid the obvious mistakes we do when we're trying something new. Before we start, next slide, please, Nish, I'd like to say a big thank you to some of our key partners here on the screen. Visionary Partners BT, and our founding partners, Data Management Association HS2 and Mental Health First Aid England for being key parts of this. All our key funding partners support means you're able to access the resources for free. So we're very keen and indeed in need of further funding support. So if your organization would like to get involved, please do get in touch to find out more. But we need to acknowledge the funding support from these organizations means you can access this interventions for free. I'd like to say a huge thank you to our guest speakers today, who you can see here, for sharing with us their valuable time and helping us tackle race inequality. You'll hear more from them later. Next slide. As you see here, today's is a very packed session. It'll be dynamic, fast-paced, and interactive. We'll start with obviously welcome and a quick poll, and I'll tell you more about race equality matters and why Safe Space is so important. You'll then hear from Amma and Emily, who will introduce you to the How to Do It Right guide, and we'll go on to cover the 4 phases and 11 steps to help you deliver Safe Space. In between, you'll hear from Carol and Kelvin from Amy PLC, who will share their experience of running Safe Space. You'll also later hear from Coin Street's Melanie and Rahima, who will share their experience of running Safe Space. So 2 brilliant case studies to share with you. Towards the end, we'll then have a 7 to 10 minute mini breakout session where we'll be in small groups of 7 or 8, and there'll be opportunity to collaborate. More on that later. Then there'll be a final poll, and if time, we may be tight for this, we'll have a mini Q&A session, but we'll see how time goes, because conscious of that. We have suggested it goes on for the next 15 minutes, so if people want to stay for that, we will manage that. Next slide. If you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. Please do feel free to tweet and post social media content during and after the event. You'll see our handles on the right. Before we introduce the How to Do It Right guide, I thought it would be helpful to just start by giving a bit of a background on Race Equality Matters. We're a not-for-profit, and we aim to be a catalyst to move organizations and individuals from just talking about race to meaningful action that has a real impact. We co-create concepts and solutions in collaboration with those with lived experience of racial inequality. The key is to help organizations make the impact we all need to see and indeed want to feel. The 4 solutions so far developed, as you can see on the screen, by Race Equality Matters are Race Equality Week, which a number of you will be aware of, Tea Break, The Big Promise, and today's event, Safe Space. You can find more information on our website, raceequalitymatters.com. Next slide. So what is Safe Space? It's a facilitated dialogue between 3 to 5 senior leaders, ExCo board members. These are the people who can make things happen in an organization, and up to 10 ethnic minority colleagues. The numbers differential is really important. We're going to show you a quick video in a sec, but Safe Space enables you to inform and educate, understand the issues, and take action.
Race Equality Matters provides organisations with the tools, resources and skills to implement them. Race Equality Matters is not a talking shop. We inspire change by creating solutions and working with organisations to implement them. One of those solutions is Safe Space. Safe Space is a 2-hour facilitated dialogue between 3 to 5 senior leaders or EXCO and up to 10 ethnic minority colleagues. Safe Space will provide a protected environment to enable brave conversations in order to generate action, remain focused, and achieve a meaningful outcome driven by the people it matters to. Safe Space will help you achieve facilitated, meaningful dialogue between ethnic minority employees and their senior leaders who must be willing to make a commitment and take action to address some of the key issues raised. Safe Space is split into 3 distinct parts. 1. Inform and educate. 2. Understand the issues. And 3. Take action. It is more than just a conversation. We also run Safe Space workshops and have a How to Do It Right guide which focuses on finding the right people to participate and create a safe and constructive environment for these conversations to take place. This guide consists of 4 key phases and 11 steps with top tips and checklists to assist, as well as a focus on well-being. This guide will enable brave conversations, facilitate uncomfortable discussions, and drive meaningful change.
So what is key and makes Safe Space solution different is this the first time ethnic minority colleagues' voices are generally listened to by senior leaders. But most crucially, meaningful action is taken and the focus is on action. And with it being Mental Health Awareness Week, it is worth mentioning that the heart of it is the well-being of an organization's employees. More than 70% of people had asked for a step-by-step guide that will take you through the process of setting and running Safe Space and taking action. So we've done that, 4 phases, 11 key steps. The guide is based on workshops and research that Race Equality Matters ran early this year and is aimed at a Safe Space project lead. And we'll talk more about that later. There are 2 key points to note. It is a guide, so please do use it as you see fit and adapt it for your own organization. And the one mandatory requirement is to have a facilitator during your Safe Space session. And again, we'll talk more about that later. We've broken each step down into consistent sections. There's a driving force for each step, why the step is needed. We then draw out key points and actions for each step. Along the way, we've included helpful features such as a checklist at the end of each section, ideas for what else you could do, links to additional resources, and obviously an important well-being alert to remind you when it's critical to check in with your colleagues involved. Next slide. I'm delighted to be joined by Amafri Fachi, Head of People, Wellbeing and Equity of Mental Health First Aid England, and Millie Patel, Marketing Consultant of Must Do Marketing. Please unmute yourself, Amma. They've been fantastic collaborators for this. Amma has squeezed us into a busy schedule during Mental Health Awareness Week. So we'll have to be leaving by 1 p.m. So we really appreciate her making the time to be with us today. Millie, as a co-collaborator, developing the guide and the workshop. I'll first hand you over to Emma, who talks through the first phase and step, which is all about safety and well-being. Over to you, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And I'm so sorry that I can't stay for the rest of the session, but as you know, it is a very busy mental health week for awareness. So I will just kick off really quickly and hand over to Millie. So when you are thinking about your safe spaces and creating those workshops, and with anything that actually involves having difficult conversations or uncomfortable conversations, you really need to think about setting up the environment so people actually are feeling safe in those conversations, and actually just checking where and getting a sense check on where they are within their well-being and also their mental health. And I always am an advocate of doing check-ins before you set up the workshops, during the workshops, and after the workshops. It's really important that people understand that what they're getting involved in and where they can get support from during the workshops and afterwards, and that you'll be checking in, whoever the facilitator is will be checking in to do so. And actually, it's very much thinking about the inclusion point, whether you're doing it face-to-face or also virtually. So it's really good to set up ground rules and understanding in terms of how you communicate, and actually when people can take time out during those sessions to enable them to actually, if they are going through or if something does trigger them through those conversations, they're able to actually stop and take a breath and come back to it should they choose to. Can I have the next slide, please? So it's, again, re-emphasizing what I just said in the first slide. It's really thinking about assurances and safety, but do not promise things that you cannot fulfill. So it's really making sure whoever the facilitator is actually is quite knowledgeable, has some knowledge about well-being, those individuals that are involved in the conversation to the resources that are at hand, whether it's the EAP or any external resources to support mental health and well-being. And again, also checking that the environment that you are creating, whether it's virtually or also in person, actually provides that confidence or that confidentiality space where people can truly be themselves and talk without being penalized. And also, I think but also making sure that you are empowering individuals to know that at any point where if something again triggers them, or if they are not comfortable with continuing the conversation, they can actually stop. But I would also think maybe continue to encourage them to participate thereafter. So again, key things are, and the more fundamental things is making sure and checking in before, during, and afterwards, making sure whoever's facilitating understands the resources and the support that's available to people to signpost them to, and making sure everybody's comfortable before you start. And actually at the end, and also importantly, ensuring that those individuals are checked in again to make sure that they are fine with the conversations that have happened, whatever the action points are, and again to check that they are they're okay to continue to whatever those actions are. So I'm going to hand over to Millie now to carry on with what the next steps are in terms of phases.
Thank you very much, Alma, and hello everyone. So I'm going to talk you through the second phase, which is all about finding the right people. And step 2 is critical. This is about identifying your safe space project lead. Now, your lead is going to spearhead the initiative and support it from start to finish. Some of the qualities you might look for in a lead are passion for race equality, resourcefulness. They might be very well connected in your organisation. They do need to be persistent. The important thing is that you give them the right information. So tell them about safe space and critically what's expected of them in this role. So identify a suitable lead, brief them on safe space, gain their agreement to lead the initiative. And at this point, it's really helpful to ask them what support and resources they think they might need to help deliver the initiative. Next slide, please. Thank you. So step 3 is about finding your senior sponsor. The reason for this is that research has found that having a sponsor on board is a driver for success. In this case, it really does matter that your sponsor is senior. They're going to help you champion, they're going to help champion the initiative. They will also help you engage with the board. So seniority does matter. Look for the right qualities in them as you do in your lead. So somebody who's interested and passionate about race equality, and give them the information they need so that they know what's expected of them as a sponsor. In the resource pack that goes with the guide, there is a role outline, which you may find helpful. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, identify a suitable senior sponsor, brief them on what safe space is, but most importantly, what is expected of them as a sponsor, and secure their clear agreement to take that role on. Now, the next two steps are interchangeable, and I'll say a little bit more about that after I've talked through them. Step 4 is about consulting with colleagues. Now, this is a great opportunity to discover some of the key issues you might want to discuss during your safe space session, but it also helps to raise awareness of the initiative, and you might actually uncover concerns that you need to mitigate along the way. So think about the questions you want to ask colleagues and that will help you uncover those key issues. We've given a number of those in the guide just to sort of help you start thinking about that. For example, you could ask what barriers they face in the workplace. And think about the channels that you're using to reach out to colleagues. Give them enough time to respond. The point here really is to give your colleagues enough time and opportunity to see the consultation and to respond to it. So think about the questions that you're going to want to ask your colleagues. Think about how you're going to reach out to them and the time that you're going to give them to respond. And this is a good point at which to signpost colleagues to the available support. The questions that you ask may well trigger individuals, so it's good to signpost them to support. Step 5 is about securing board buy-in. The board, your C-suite have the power to make change happen, and as such, they're essential participants to the safe space session. So you need to find the time to speak with your board, and this is where your senior sponsor will be able to help. Think about the information they need to know about safe space and to encourage them to take part in it. In the guide, there's quite a long list of the information that you might want to include. For example, a list of the benefits or the competitor organisations that are taking part. Critically, you want to be very clear on 3 outcomes that you want from that meeting. 1, a decision to run the initiative. 2 is the clear commitment to prepare for and participate in the session itself. And 3rd, a clear commitment to take action on at least one of the key issues arising from the session. So find the time to speak with the board, engage your sponsor if you need their support in setting this up, inform the board about what safe space is, and critically gain their clear commitment to prepare for and participate in the session and to take action on the issues arising. So I said that steps 4 and 5 are interchangeable, and they really are. It depends on your organisation and what you feel comfortable with. If you consult with colleagues first, you might gather information that's useful for you to present to the board. If you go to your board first to gain their buy-in, it might help you to consult with colleagues having that senior support already in place. The project lead is going to need some support in implementing the initiative, so we suggest you create a task and finish group. With their different skills, experience and expertise, the group will help you shape, drive and implement safe space. So look for a diverse group of colleagues. We recommend that at least 60% of this group is made up of ethnic minority colleagues. You might want to appoint a chairperson. This can be really helpful because they'll keep meetings on track, they'll keep the initiatives on track and hold people to account to make sure that you really do deliver the initiative. We also recommend that you draw up a terms of reference, and the main point really for that is to be very clear on the roles and responsibilities. There is within the resource pack a template for this to get you started. So in summary, choose your group members, think about the skills, the experience that you need, but also the diversity of the group. Appoint a chairperson, and within the guide you'll find a list of the qualities that you might look for in your chairperson, and draft a terms of reference. The final step in this phase is about finding your employee participants. They will be channeling the voices of the wider ethnic minority workforce in the safe space session. Now, we recommend up to 10 ethnic minority colleagues join this group. 10 because of the balance with the 3 to 5 board members, but also for a 2-hour session, you need to make sure that there's a meaningful conversation and people have time to participate. We suggest that this group is representative, again, because they're talking on behalf of the wider workforce. When you are inviting colleagues to step forward to participate in this group, they're going to need information about safe space. You also need to be clear about your selection process. What that process will be will depend very much on the size and the nature of your organisation. And think about how you're going to reach out to colleagues. Make use of all your internal communication channels, and also think about the time that they need to read and digest the information and respond. So decide your selection criteria and process. Be clear with your colleagues on what that is. Use a range of channels to reach out to your colleagues, and select your participants for this group. Again, aiming for up to 10 colleagues for a 2-hour session. And this is another key point at which it can be very helpful and useful to signpost participants, but also wider colleagues to additional support that's available to them. Thank you very much. I'm now going to hand you back to Javed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Millie. Thanks for all your support in this. So finding the right people, and I'm going to suggest we found 2 right people here, being Carol Elderfield and Kelvin Campbell from Amy PLC. If you both can unmute yourselves, that'd be great. Amy PLC, we believe, were one of the first, if not the first, organisations to have implemented safe space. And we're delighted they've been able to join us and share their experience with you today. Amy PLC is a leading infrastructure services and engineering company with 16,000 employees. They're experts in engineering and operations. Carol is a business-focused HR director who is working with Amy to support their inclusion agenda. One of their key aims is for the organisation to enable individuals to be at their best more of the time. Kelvin is a senior recruiter at Amy and the chair of their multicultural group. And it's fantastic. Both of them are joining us today. So thank you, and over to Carol and Kelvin.
Thank you. We were asked why we did safe space, and actually the timing for us was perfect, because we hadn't done anything in the race equality space, because we were our multicultural group was quite new. We set it up on the back of George Floyd's murder, and Kelvin was the chair, became the chair of that group. So we utilised the Race Equality Week's first Race Equality Week to enable us to launch this. And we felt that safe space was right for us because we'd run some sessions on what is privilege anyway, and started to hear things that people of difference, our ethnic minority colleagues, were encountering that we really needed to address in our policies, the way we worked, and therefore we felt that safe space was right for us. How did we promote it? We decided that the best way for us to promote it was really through utilising those people who had nominated themselves for the first multicultural group that we'd ever had. And talking to Kelvin, he felt that those individuals had the energy, they were ready to speak, and we had a group of people set up already. So we shared what safe space was, and we asked for volunteers within that group. Kelvin, did you want to add anything to that?
No, just the first session we had, it was extremely positive, because the build-up had all, the momentum was all going in the right direction, which was to have this conversation. Nothing had been said about George Floyd's, nothing had been discussed, but it was bubbling and people wanted to have that discussion, and I wanted to be honest. So safe space was perfect time for people to not vent, because we believe in doing this from a position of positivity. There's no attacking, there's no negativity. It's just people are learning, we're developing. And that session gave us so much information in regards to what people were feeling, what needed to change, what was going on in the business, because we put different new business units together. We all come together and we spoke about what's going on in our different business units, what we're unhappy with, what can we change, where can we start our journey, and just being totally honest. And people were listening, and because people were listening, who wasn't judging what was being said, it was a powerful meeting.
Yeah.
And it kind of went in a direction that we didn't even think it was going to be as successful as it was, but it was massively successful. And we've held another one since.
Mm-hmm. And what was important to us was utilising the guide, but actually, as you've said, Millie, adapting it to our organisation. So actually, we had set up an inclusion forum already, which is kind of like a steering group that we have, which is made up of the leaders of our affinity groups, all of our affinity groups, plus a number of leaders, senior leaders in the organisation, who have decision-making power, actually. So we have devolved decision-making power in our organisation now with a new chief executive. So we're less reliant on having board members to make decisions. So we have that forum. And what we did was we took any actions that came out of that facilitated group back to that inclusion forum, and we make those actions happen. We have the devolved authority to make those actions happen, and we have made a number of actions happen. But the guide was really, really helpful in allowing us to structure what it was that we were doing in those safe space conversations, how we held them, how we made sure that people's well-being was looked after. And there were certainly people that I caught up with afterwards, and Kelvin did, to speak to afterwards, just to check in and make sure they were okay. We had some really great early feedback and really great actions that came out of it. I don't know if you wanted to share some of the feedback, Kelvin.
Yeah, so personally myself, I've thrived. My relationship with Carol is fantastic, just from being in that space where I could be honest with her. She's been honest with me. My personal, I work better. I'm focused. I'm driven because I can see there's something at the end of the tunnel now. Whereas before I felt like I was just an employee. I'm not. And it was massive just to see that change in myself. I've had conversations with people where I had a meeting with somebody who just all I wanted was to change their she, her on her email signature. We changed that. We asked the manager, is that okay? Yes, no issue, no problem. She's gone from being this quiet, shy person to this amazing, fantastic speaker, confident. She's doing amazing at work now. She's got a strut in her voice. Everything's positive. And that's just because she knows there's a space where she can come to where people are genuinely going to listen to them and to listen to her, and she's going to say, this is my concern, what can you do? And it's changing people, not just myself, others in the business are becoming focused. They're believing there's going to be change because there has to be. And get in touch with Carol, and she makes things happen. She's a conduit to the top of the level, and she believes in what we're doing. And you can tell throughout the business that there's a change coming, and it's fantastic. And there's a positivity about what we're doing at the moment as well.
Yeah, and we didn't have any difficulty in getting board support because the board had signed off our inclusion strategy, which included accelerating what we do for race equality. We have Michael Burgess, who's our group HR director. He sponsors inclusion, but we also have two other managing directors in our organisation who sponsor inclusion. One is in transport infrastructure and the other is in our waste treatment business, but they actively sponsor it. And also actually our managing director in consulting is actively involved in role models, inclusive behaviour. So we don't have the issue of getting the board aligned, and as I've said, they've devolved the decision-making authority through our freedom to perform culture and strategy. In terms of actions, we had 5 clear actions that came out of the group from reviewing our recruitment process. I think the most critical one for me was reviewing the talent process and how we get ethnic minority people promoted, because loud and clear, people who are from an ethnic minority background feel they have to work 3 times as hard to be promoted. And I'd never heard that before, and I've really learned that. And as an HR professional, I feel really embarrassed that I didn't know that before. But we've really looked at how we can change our talent process to accelerate promotions. We've been asked to refresh our leadership coaching, and we've done that. We're ready to launch a general leadership coaching session in the next 2 weeks. And actually next week, Kelvin and I, with Michael, the Group HR Director, are running a race equality session, which we've expanded out to a bit more wider inclusion with the top 100 leaders in our organisation. And all of that has come from the safe space. We wouldn't have done that, and we wouldn't have done it as quickly had we not run the safe space. So we're doing that next week. We had a rehearsal this morning, and we know we need another rehearsal next week to get that right. And I think the last thing that we were asked, we're carrying on these sessions, by the way, and they're externally facilitated by someone who was recommended to me by someone that I trust implicitly in the leadership space. And Syra has done an amazing job. She's really independent, challenges us to say what's really on our minds, and makes us really have those difficult conversations. But I think the last thing that we wanted to share with you is really the top tips. And Kelvin, I think it's really right to stop and finish with you on that.
Yeah. So with regards to our top tips, just 3 things we need. 3 things. It's someone that understands. So it's someone that feels how you feel, and that for us was Carol. Me and Carol have something in common that people don't really realize. When we say we've got something in common, people say, really? I said, yes, we've got something in common, and I can trust her implicitly. Whatever I say to her, if I ask for it to be private, it will go nowhere else. And that comes hand in hand. The second thing for us is honesty. You have to be able to be honest. You have to encourage yourself to be honest. If you put yourself in a vulnerable position, the people in that meeting will put themselves in a vulnerable position, and they'll be honest. And what you'll find is you can change things when there's a lot of honesty. Mm-hmm. And the third most important thing, it has to be safe. It has to be safe. What's said in that meeting, no matter what it said, who said, even if it's something that you think, you know what, I can change that right now. It's not necessarily what people want. They don't want things changed right now. Sometimes they just want to be listened to and heard. So as much as you think, yep, let's go and change that. No, because sometimes that person may feel that they're going to get outed. Mm. And people of colour already know they don't want to be outed. They want to just keep their head down and get on with their job. So if it's safe, it has to be 100% safe.
That's a great point, because over 3 sessions, we had a leadership issue raised. And in the first 2 sessions, nobody wanted to talk about it. And in the 3rd session, we finally got somebody to open up and talk about it. And we're now dealing with that leadership issue. But it took 3 sessions for the trust to be there to allow us to deal with the leadership issue. And it's quite a serious leadership issue, but it's being dealt with confidentially. And the person who's raised it has the confidence in us to do that well. And so don't push it, is I think what we're saying is things will come up that you want to jump on and you want to deal with, but you have to do it when that individual is ready. So thank you for giving us the time to share.
Thanks, David.
That, Javid.
Thank you.
So I think it was really clear top tips there, but also action taken and as a way of going about it. So thank you, Kelvin and Carol. Absolutely fantastic. And as we said to people, we videoed this session today. So actually, I suggest people cut and use that session we just heard from Carol and Kelvin. So thank you. So we've now reached phase 3 and step 8 of going through the guide. Next slide, please, Nish. It's important for all participants to prepare in advance of the session so you get the most value out of it as possible. We mentioned earlier that one mandatory element is a good facilitator. And as they discussed, they should manage the conversation sensitively and robustly, ensuring that the session is kept on track, but also looking out for participants' well-being. This could be someone internal, or if resources permit, as Amy did, an external facilitator. You should consider providing a briefing and or a Q&A session in advance for senior leader participants so they feel supported and prepared for the session. They may want to think about the questions they want to ask of ethnic minority colleagues in the first part of Safe Space session, what I call Education Light. They may want to get support in how to ask these questions appropriately, e.g. what's the issue with a term BAME? Thirdly, employee participants need to prepare the key issues that they want to take to the table on behalf of their peers. And as mentioned, they are representatives. You may have done an earlier consultation with colleagues that Millie mentioned, which have highlighted some key issues already. You may also want to collate relevant data or evidence on why these key issues are needed for the organisation to address. Finally, remember, like any meeting, to sort out logistics, including booking the physical or virtual space and allocating roles like the note taker or chat box monitor. So there's some choose facilitator, support board, support employees, and sort out the final details. Next slide. So now we're on to step 9, which is all about running the session. When it comes to running your safe space session, think about all the timings you may need. Remember to allow additional time in case participants need time out or breaks. We've suggested 2 hours to cover a minimum of 3 key issues, and we break it down in what I call Education Light, where the senior leaders could ask questions that outside that room could be seen as ignorant, or they'd be afraid they'd be shot down, or could be even seen as racist. I said the one we raised earlier, what's the problem with a term BAME? So a CEO or director may not want to ask that outside of the room, but in this room it can be explained. And that question, there's a whole range of answers. So that's a really good example. But this is Education Light. And we say that takes roughly around 20 minutes. The second part is discuss and understand the key issues that are brought to the table. And it's for the senior leaders to really listen and facilitated, like in this case with Syra, to really help the leaders understand what the issue is. And then summarize and agree next steps. And that's really important. There is next steps after this. Next slide. The facilitator must keep the conversation on track, ensuring there's fair opportunities for people to speak, focusing discussion on the key issues, and managing emotions and well-being, absolutely crucial. So a checklist is introductions, Education Light, discuss issues, summarize, and agree next steps. The next slide. We've now reached phase 4 and step 10. This is the crucial element of safe space: reflect and take action. This is from our research, versions of lunch and learns or other versions of safe space tend to fall down. The critical part. So what's important is the board, ExCo, C-suite must decide on key issues or issues to take action on. And they need to come back and tell the participants, this is what we're going to take action on. You gave us a number of issues, but like Carol, I think, alluded to, that there was a leadership issue that needs to be taken. What's important is they set up an action plan and or a task and finish group to tackle these issues. So it's not giving it to D&I or HR or the race network. It's a mixed task and finish group to get it through. And then look for commitment, accountability, transparency, and progress. Absolutely important. So for the first time, ethnic minority employee voices are being heard, but they see action taken, and it's pan the organization. Thank you. So to recap on this bit, the board, ExCo, discuss the key issues, come back so the participant hears what's being tackled, and there's an action plan and task and finish group. And that's so crucial because in most of the activity in recent months and even in the past, this has never been addressed. So that's all the key steps. Also, it's essential to monitor progress. So, and to learn from the experience that Carol and alluded to, and Kelvin, that they had 2 or 3 of these sessions to help make it happen. So review and capture what's working and not working, and keep track of progress. So monitoring progress and impact is really important. What gets measured gets done. Thank you. Next slide. So we've gone through the guide, and as everyone's got access to you on that. So now's the perfect time to hear from our final pair of speakers, Melanie Davis and Rahima Esop from Coin Street. They've implemented Safe Space and they've kindly agreed to share their experiences in the next 7 minutes. Please unmute yourselves, Melanie and Rahima. Coin Street are a social enterprise creating an inspirational neighbourhood in Waterloo and North Southwark in London. From a derelict site in 1984, they've created a vibrant, diverse and welcoming place for people to live, work and play. Melanie herself has over 10 years experience in HR, generous role, working across charities and social enterprises, currently the head of people and team building. Rahima has 20 years working in the early years and early help and safeguarding sector, with 15 years in leadership and management. She's committed to developing teams and individual practitioners so they are valued and empowered and have a voice in the organization. So without any further ado, thank you, and over to Melanie and Rahima.
Thanks, Javed. I'll just quickly run through, if you can go over to the next slide, what we're going to talk through. So we'll just say briefly why we ran the session and the session prep involved, the actual running of the session, plus the follow-up, and then a few top tips. Next slide, please. So since the death of George Floyd, the staff members themselves have been running what we've been calling safe space sessions. They were okay, but they weren't really meaningful. There was no action that was being taken. Also, despite them being called safe spaces, people didn't really feel that safe to speak up about things that were affecting them. So we joined the Race Equality Network last year, and during the Race Equality Week, we launched a number of campaigns, and one of which was to relaunch the Safe Space workshop following the Race Equality Network's How to Do It Right guide. So we followed the guide and we sort of adapted it a bit, but we used that guide as a basis. Before this, I sent out, can you just go back a bit? Before this, I spoke to Rahima, shared the guide with her and made sure that she understood and she was comfortable running it. I felt like she was the most suitable person in the organization to do this because although she's not a trained facilitator or mediator, she was undertaking a coaching qualification. So I felt that she would know how to ask the right questions, how to encourage all the participants to take part, and obviously also facilitate the conversation. So during Race Equality Week, we sent an email to all staff explaining that we're running a new and improved safe space workshop, and we asked people to register. So, I mean, you might expect that we had quite a number of people all signing up and wanting to take part, but that wasn't the case. There was very little people, perhaps one or two who said they were interested. And then this is when Rahima did what I would say was probably the most important part of her role of making the safe space workshop successful. Next slide, please. Rahima?
Hi, thanks, Melanie. Hi, everybody. So this is where I took up kind of engaging people. So what I did was send individual emails out and had conversations with colleagues from ethnic minority backgrounds about the email. So I didn't just assume that everybody had seen it. I kind of spoke to everybody and said, had they seen it? What were their thoughts on it? How comfortable were they to attend? And if they did feel like attending, what level of participation? So were they happy to speak? Were they just happy to be a part of it? And how comfortable they were to challenge the leadership team? And the other thing that I asked was, what is it that I could do to help them to engage with the workshop? And some of the questions they asked me was, why now? What's the point in this? What change will we see as a result? And the other thing that there was quite a lot of anxiety around is that how me as an employee can challenge the leadership team. So what, you know, that could have an impact on me as an employee here. And how can I be assured that I would be safe? And then one of the other things people asked was, if a colleague didn't or wasn't able to attend, can I share what their experiences were? I didn't have the answers to all of these questions, so I encouraged them that this was a space where they'll be able to ask some of these questions, but I did assure their safety that as a colleague and that you're challenging the leadership team, that this is a safe space and that wouldn't have any effect on them as an employee. Melanie and I also met with the leadership team to gauge their understanding, because I think my concern was that it's okay to say, yes, I'll attend, but then did they really have the understanding of what the expectation was for them? And we wanted to know, do they understand their process, the role that they're going to play in this, and that how comfortable they would be uncomfortable.
given the topics and the discussions that we'd be having. And that what change would they like to see? So this wasn't just about people participating from ethnic minority backgrounds, but this really was about engaging them and them thinking about their organisation and what change they'd like to see. So Melanie and I had a follow-up email after our conversation with the leadership team. And as Javed said earlier, we suggested some questions that they may want to ask following the format of the Safe Space workshop. Next slide, please. So for me, I created a PowerPoint with a few slides, including reminders and prompts as facilitator to support me. I got to know the guide really well. I did lots of reading, a little talking to myself through things. I was really keen to ensure that I facilitated the workshop with the sensitivity it needed and the justice that it deserved. And I was very aware that this was a massive thing we were doing, and I, as facilitator, needed to make sure that I was doing it properly, and that I did, did it with sensitivity. I did keep in contact with Melanie throughout, because my work with the employees, I wanted to make sure that that was correlated and that we were getting interest. I was very conscious that I didn't want, Melanie and I were conscious that we didn't want a top-heavy kind of meeting, that there was more leadership people than there were participants. Next slide, please. So the running of the session was held over Zoom, and Melanie arranged most of the logistics around this. We established ground rules. So I'd set some ground rules and said these is what we'd have as ground rules, but offered the opportunity for people to add whatever they felt was appropriate as well. We shared the agenda, and I did follow the timings, as Javed said earlier. I'd kind of talked to everybody, so including the leadership team, that this is the person will ask the first question, then the second, third and fourth, and then participants as well. They knew when I was going to come to them. So they had 3 people that were very willing to speak and ask questions. And I said, after this person is speaking, it will be you. So I kind of assured them and helped them to be a part of the session. And everybody, I was really pleased that everybody took part and did what they'd agreed and spoke up. It was very emotive. It was really powerful. There were tears from participants as well as the leadership team, and some incredibly personal stories were shared. And there was a lot of silences as well. Sometimes it was okay. They were heavy silences, but that was part of what was happening. We just allowed that, and it was natural. So we let that be, because a lot of people were thinking and needed time and space. And some talked through the chat facility, which was okay as well. And we did use the full 2 hours that we'd allocated for the workshop. Next slide.
Yeah, sorry, just hold the slides there, because now we're on the right slide now.
Okay.
Thanks. So the session was great. It was fantastic. It was awkward. It was uncomfortable. At the end of it, I felt really exhausted, because it's quite emotionally, it's quite draining. But I also felt exhilarated. It felt like the penny had finally dropped for some people who just had no idea that some of the things that colleagues from ethnic minority backgrounds have to put up with. It was moving, like Rahima said, some people did get upset. Made sure to follow up with them, point them in the right direction to get additional support. But most importantly, Rahima followed up with each person individually to check in with them that they were okay. Rahima?
Yeah. So I talked to Melanie to review and reflect on the workshop after the workshop. And I sent individual emails to all the participants, as well as conversations, to see how they were doing, how they felt the workshop went. But equally just difficult, it was much needed, and that they were really pleased that they'd taken part. And one person fed back and said, today you did a wonderful thing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So that was the kind of level of appreciation that people felt, that we holding the workshop had helped them and as an employee in the organisation.
Next slide, please. So my top tips are to choose your facilitator carefully. That's really important. For us, it made sense to have someone internal who could speak to our staff and really gain their trust. Secondly, I'd say the guidance often talks about being comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. I would add that you need to be comfortable with silence, because you will get that. And a trained facilitator will be comfortable with that and not try and fill the silence. Finally, Rahima and I had worked with the leadership team ahead of the session, as Rahima mentioned, to help them develop the questions that they wanted to ask the group, one of which was the BAME question that Job had mentioned previously. That part of the conversation was actually really important, because not only does it help break the ice with the participants, because the leadership team are actually doing a lot of the talking up front and asking up front. We actually learned a lot more during that session than we thought we would. And actually some of the actions that came out of the end of the safe space session, some of it was from those initial conversations. So that's a really important stage not to miss. Rahima?
Yeah, I think just in addition to what Melanie said, I think for me it was really important that I took the time to talk to people in order to engage them, and that this part shouldn't be rushed. It shouldn't be something like we're running a workshop and that here we go. I think there needs to be investment in that part of the process. Get to know the guidance and the steps within it. For me as a facilitator, that was really important. And not to treat the leadership team as a them and us situation. Everyone needs support with this, including them. And do really work towards agreeing short-term targets and goals at the end of the workshop, so that there's something that they've got ownership of and accountability of. So there's an afterlife to the workshop, and that there's something tangible to take away. Keep the dialogue going with both participants and the leadership team after the workshop. And some of the actions similar to what I think it was Carol and Kelvin talked about was, ongoing things about recruitment and retention for BAME colleagues, support for them themselves in order to manage this whole process, the leadership team. And one of the things that we've talked about is an ongoing safe space, so that people don't have to hold on to some of these anxieties, some of these experiences that they're having, as they have done previously, but that they're able to share things. So these are some of the actions that we're going to be working on, and that we're supporting, and continue to have dialogue with the leadership team in order to make these happen and keep them going.
Thank you both. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Slightly different story, but very insightful and showing, I guess, the breadth of safe space. And I think Rahima was showing earlier about, try and encourage, because people don't respond initially, don't give up. Try and get, people will come. And I think the really important thing is the most common question we've done initiatives, we've done this, why will people listen? Will I be, all the questions you said are absolutely, but I think why we're showcasing Coin Street and Amy is to show actually do it, and the difference it'll make is fantastic. We appreciate some organizations may not be ready for it, but in the last 12 months, organizations saying we want to do more. This is a fantastic chance to do it. So thank you, Rahima and Melanie, tons for that. So before we finish, say a big thank you to the organization supporting Race Equality Matters. As mentioned, we're not for profit. So if you'd like to fund or explore sponsorship and market opportunities, please do get in touch. It's the only way we can keep this for free for yourselves. So we will share the recording. So please do go to our website to find out more and stay in touch. Please do let us know how you're doing. And we want to champion organizations that are doing well. Without, we can't change the past, but we can change the future. And with Safe Space or other solutions, please join us, please unite with us. Collectively, we can make this change. So thank you all, and thank you so much to all our wonderful speakers for today. I think you've added value, and the feedback is saying that. So have a good rest of the week, and good Mental Health Awareness Week. Take care all. Bye-bye.